Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Hard Count podcast. And today, we're going to be going over my Week 5 stardom, sit-em for fantasy football. These are some guys that if you got on your roster, you should stick in your starting lineup confidently, or some guys that you want to stick on your bench for this week because I'm not expecting them to have such great weeks. Let's get right into it with my start of the week, who is none other than Justin Jefferson, wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. And hopefully you did, as my great substitute host Into Sports said on Monday, what he told you guys to do, and that was to pick up Justin Jefferson. Hopefully you did that. This guy is a must start this week for me. I love this start. He gets a great matchup with Seattle this week, who has allowed 336 yards per game to just wide receivers. That's right, just wide receivers, no tight ends, no running backs. That is ridiculous. That is most in the NFL by a large margin. And as you can tell, that is great for Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, his teammate, who are literally the only two wide receivers in this offense that are actually getting consistent targets. In the past two games, since Jefferson has broken out, which I think this is what we can expect going forward, because rookies, and those first couple games, it was a little rough for them because they were coming out of an offseason where they didn't have training camp, and they didn't have preseason, the time to prepare that like they usually do. So I think that what we've seen the past 2 weeks from Jefferson is going to be more what we see going forward. But in those past two games, Jefferson and Thielen together have gotten all but two of the targets that have gone to wide receivers. And this is also with a team that underuses its tight ends as well. So a lot of targets going their way. Jefferson right now has averaged 7 targets per game in these past 2 weeks. And this is going to be a very favorable game script for Jefferson. Seattle forces shootouts, high-scoring games, and they force the opposing team to pass the ball a lot in the 4 games Seattle's played this season. The opposing quarterback, the quarterback for the team that Seattle is playing, has averaged 50 passing attempts per game. 50, that is absurd. That is 2 games worth of work almost. So if you take those 7 targets, double it, that's 14 or 15 targets for Justin Jefferson this week. I don't think that's very likely. I don't think he's going to get 14, 15 targets, but even if he gets 12, 13, that is huge numbers for Justin Jefferson. He gets an easy matchup with Shaq Griffin at corner. And you're giving all of this to a guy that is number 1 graded wide receiver at PFF, number 1 in yards per target, number 1 in yards after catch per target, number 1 in yards per route run. This is the most efficient wide receiver in the NFL right now, and you're going to be giving him 12, 13 targets potentially this week. So this is a must start this week. Please do yourself a favor. Start my start of the week this week in Justin Jefferson for the Minnesota Vikings. He's going to have a huge week against this bad Seattle defense. All right, next, we're moving on to just my regular stardoms, and we've got a quarterback here. Teddy Bridgewater of the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, you're not going to start him over a guy like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, but he's a guy that if you are streaming off the waiver wires for a quarterback, maybe if you got Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers on bye this week, and you got to pick up Teddy Bridgewater. He has a great matchup with Atlanta, and we were just talking about Seattle's defense being bad. Atlanta's defense is close to, if not as bad as Seattle's defense. They've allowed 4 or more touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks in every single game this season. That includes the Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles combination. They got 4 touchdowns combined. So, this is a very fun offense. I like this offense quite a bit. I expect it to be a high-scoring game. They've got DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Mike Davis, who has done a great job in filling that McCaffrey role. I expect this game to be very high scoring. Teddy Bridgewater will be a huge benefactor of that. So yeah, if you're missing Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, or you need to stream someone off waivers, definitely pick up Teddy Bridgewater in a game where it's going to be high scoring, it's going to be a shootout, and against a very bad Atlanta defense. I like Teddy Bridgewater quite a bit this week. So yeah, start Teddy Bridgewater. Next, we've got the running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, James Robinson, and we're going to be starting with a couple running backs here, and this is the best one. If you were not already starting James Robinson, it's time to staple him in your lineups. He's been an absolute workhorse in that Jaguars offense. He's filled that Fournette role that they lost very, very well. And it's clear that he is the lead back. The carries are not really going to be going anywhere else for the Jaguars. Since the start of the season, James Robinson has gotten 93.75% of the carries for the Jaguars. And Robinson last week was in on a season-high 78% of the Jaguar snaps, which was very, very promising. And he has gotten 100 or more yards each of the 3 past games. It has been a very good performance from James Robinson in those games. And this week he gets to play the Houston Texans, who have allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to running backs. So this is a great matchup for James Robinson. And, we have seen that even in game scripts that should really favor James Robinson's backfield mate, Chris Thompson, who we know as a receiving back, James Robinson has been really getting involved in that passing game as well. And he's getting more and more involved in the past couple weeks. We've seen he's gotten more receptions than Thompson in the past 2 games as well. He's gotten 5 and 4, and that role had increased from the first couple weeks. So I expect it to stay up there. And I wouldn't even be surprised if this receiving role increased for James Robinson. The role of Chris Thompson diminished. So, Robinson is a good back whose role is ever increasing in that Jaguars offense, playing a very good matchup with the Texans. Start James Robinson this week. Staple him in your lineups. Next, we've got another running back. Start Antonio Gibson this week. We got news earlier this week that Kyle Allen is playing quarterback for the Washington football team. And this tells me that the running backs are going to be a big part of the game plan. And Antonio Gibson is the lead back in that backfield for sure, because Kyle Allen was, Ron Rivera even said, Kyle Allen's not great. He is a guy that's going to manage the game, and that's very promising for Antonio Gibson's fantasy production. Washington right now leads the NFL in goal line carries. Peyton Barber had 6, Gibson 5, Haskins has 4, and 5 of those for Barber were from week 1. He's only had 1 since. Gibson has 5, and now Haskins is benched. You replace him with Allen. Allen is not going to be getting nearly as many of those goal line carries. This opens up a lot of touchdown opportunity for Antonio Gibson. And I think that he's a guy that you can maybe expect a touchdown from almost every week. The only reason I would be a little hesitant is because the Washington offense is not very good. But Antonio Gibson's going to be the guy when they get down in the red zone. So, and I've also seen him, he's going to get more involved in the passing game. Yes, J.D. McKissick is still very valuable in the passing game for Washington. But Kyle Allen's going to be wanting to get the ball to running backs. Antonio Gibson is going to be out there for a lot of the plays. And McLaurin, who is really their main and only threat as a receiver, is going to be shadowed by Jalen Ramsey this week. So that's not always going to be an option for Allen to throw to. He's going to have to dump the ball to running backs. Gibson is going to be a benefactor of this. And we've seen how valuable he can be in the receiving role for Washington. Last week, he had 4 receptions, 82 yards against Baltimore. So I like Gibson quite a bit in that receiving game. I think he will be able to put up production. And it's against a Rams defense, which is good. But in weeks 1, 2, and 3, they allowed a running back to have over 120 scrimmage yards. It's not too hard of a defense to run on outside of Aaron Donald, who is an absolute beast. But I like Antonio Gibson a lot this week. Start him if you can. Next, we've got wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, Tyler Boyd. Yes, we have Tyler Boyd here, my favorite. He's playing my favorite team as well, the Baltimore Ravens. And why would I be telling you to start a Bengals receiver in what seems like a very bad matchup against the Ravens, who have a great secondary? It's because this matchup is great for Tyler Boyd. Boyd has really been the only reliable pass catcher in the Bengals offense at the moment. He should be getting the majority of the targets. AJ Green has been getting targets, but we've seen that diminish over the past couple weeks. And AJ Green has been incredibly inefficient, while Tyler Boyd has been very good on the targets he is getting. And I said you should draft Boyd a lot because Burrow loves targeting the slot. We have seen that come true here. Boyd has led the team in targets the past 2 weeks, and he's becoming Burrow's favorite target to throw to in this offense. Now, what about the stacked Ravens secondary? What about Marlon Humphrey? What about Marcus Peters? Well, Tyler Boyd is a slot receiver. Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters play corner on the outsides. They will be guarding T. Higgins and AJ Green. not a good thing for T. Higgins and A.J. Green. It's a good thing for Tyler Boyd. Anthony Averett is going to be covering Tyler Boyd in the slot. This is a very, very favorable matchup for Boyd. Averett has not been good since Tavon Young got injured in week 1 for the Ravens. Averett has allowed 11 catches on 14 targets so far this year, and Boyd is going to take advantage of this matchup. I like it a lot. Bro, to me, is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL right now, and Boyd is going to be open quite a bit this Sunday. So I like this Bengals offense to move the ball a little better than people might think against this Ravens defense. So I like Tyler Boyd a lot this week. Start him if you can. He's going to be the main target in this Bengals offense. All right, next we've got another wide receiver in Darius Slayton. And I think Slayton is going to bounce back this week against the Dallas Cowboys. I like him a lot. He struggled to put up numbers since week 1, where he had 2 touchdowns. Since then, he's had 9 receptions for 134 total yards, and that's over the course of 3 games, so that is not very good. But he's still averaging 7.25 targets per game. He's still a big, deep threat, big, deep play threat for the Giants offense. Slayton is going to be facing that Dallas defense that got toasted by the Browns and Odell Beckham Jr. last week, and they've allowed the 5th most points to opposing wide receivers this season, and he is a little bit risky. I will say that because this Giants offense is not very good, but Dallas's defense has really, really struggled. And this game is going to be a shootout because Dallas is going to be able to move the ball well against the Giants defense. The Giants offense is going to have to throw the ball quite a bit to keep up with Dallas. So I like Slayton with having a lot of upside in a nice matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. You can start him as a wide receiver 3 with high upside this week. Next, we move on to my sit-ems. We're starting here with Melvin Gordon, coming off a big week. But I think that fantasy performance was a little bit reliant on the 43-yard touchdown he had. I'm not going to take it away from him, but still, I think that, he has been good for the rest of the season. He has been a good fantasy running back. He's done a great job. But Phillip Lindsay is back this week, and they rested him to the point where I think he's going to come in and take back his role in this Broncos offense, or at least get a role in this Broncos offense very, very quickly. It is a very tough matchup against the Patriots. And I don't have too much to say here about Melvin Gordon. I know it's a big name. You might be wanting a big explanation for this one, but I don't have too much to say. It's a very tough matchup. Phillip Lindsay is going to be splitting carries with Melvin Gordon this week. So yeah, sit Melvin Gordon this week if you can, if you have the option to. Next, we've got Mark Ingram, and I called it. Mark Ingram was a do not draft for me going into the year. And, it might be a little bit obvious that Mark Ingram should be a sit-em for you this week, but I don't want you guys to be baited by the good matchup with Cincinnati. I think it's time to start bailing on Mark Ingram. The Ravens' backfield has been one of the most frustrating things for fantasy owners to get a grasp of this season. Through 4 games, hey, we've seen the Ravens run the ball 30 times per game. That's a lot of times. But 39 of those carries were to Lamar Jackson, 34 were to Mark Ingram, 27 to Gus Edwards, and 15 to J.K. Dobbins. That is not what you want to see if you were an Ingram fantasy owner. And again, this might seem obvious, but I don't want people to be fooled by the easy matchup with Cincinnati. He got in the end zone last week. He's going to be way too reliant on getting in the end zone to get any sort of fancy production. So this backfield is just way too crowded. I'm not taking the risk of Mark Ingram. So yeah, do not start Mark Ingram. Put him on your bench. I think it's time to start bailing on him. Next, we've got another running back in a similar situation, Darrell Henderson, and a similar reason to Mark Ingram. Henderson took the spotlight from Malcolm Brown in week 2, was expected to have a big game against the Giants. That did not happen at all. Played on 39% of snaps last week and was targeted just 1 time. We get the return of Cam Akers this week. Washington has allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs. That backfield is just way too crowded at the moment, something that I'm avoiding. I'm just avoiding that entire backfield at all costs. It's too confusing. We don't know how the carries are going to be split up in that offense. not a risk I'm willing to take once again. So yeah, Darrell Henderson, he's had some good weeks, but this Rams backfield is too confusing. Put him on your bench right now. We'll see how the carries are spread out. So yeah, I'm avoiding that Rams backfield. Next, we're moving on to some wide receivers here. First, we're starting with what might surprise some people, Odell Beckham Jr., who had a great week last week. Almost 40 fantasy points, but hear me out. We saw Beckham have that breakup week. He had many big plays, but that was against a Cowboys secondary that was probably the worst in the NFL at the moment, or at least it's up there. The Browns shown that they can be good when they are clicking, but we have not seen any sort of sustainability from this Browns offense whatsoever. There have been good weeks we've seen in the past, again, where this Browns offense is clicking and we're thinking, oh, is this their clicking week? And I've been disappointed every time. And could it actually be their clicking week this time? Absolutely. I could be wrong about this. But it's hard for me to ignore the previous 19 games in Cleveland. We saw Odell really struggle to get anything going with Baker. And we know the Browns can perform when they are comfortable, but the Colts are going to make the Browns and Baker uncomfortable. This Browns offense is not good when Baker is uncomfortable, which is not good for Odell. This Colts defense is one of the best defenses in the NFL at the moment. They're going to want to take away Beckham with any means necessary, as he was the Browns' big weapon last week. He was the star of the show. So I do not like Odell this week. I think he's going to come back down to earth. If you have options, I'd sit Odell. Yeah, I know it's a little bold, but I like to be bold here. So yeah. Next, we've got Jeudy of the Denver Broncos. Maybe not quite as bold as the Odell one. And we thought Jeudy would thrive opposite Courtland Sutton. It's been a little bit rough for him though. He's had fewer than 65 receiving yards in every game this season. And this offense has just been struggling to score points and get yards. The return of Locke helps. He's going to be uncomfortable though immediately against this Patriots defense, which is very good. I think that I like Jeudy over Tim Patrick. I think Jeudy is still the number one receiver in this offense, but I don't like Jeudy. I wouldn't put him in my lineup. They play the Patriots this week, and he might be getting coverage from Stephon Gilmore, which would not be good at all for the young rookie. So sit Jerry Jeudy this week. Next, we've got our final guy. Sit Mike Gesicki this week. Things are looking bleak for Miami's tight end here. He started out strong, 23 in week 2, but over the course of 2 games, he's gotten 1 target in both games. Not good at all. I am very concerned for Mike Gesicki, especially now that the Dolphins have Devontae Parker back and fully healthy. Gesicki is going to struggle to find his place in this offense. They play a good 49ers defense this week, which has great linebackers to cover Gesicki. This should be a rough game for Mike Gesicki. Sit him this week. All right, those were my startums and sit-ems for week 5 of the NFL season. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a comment down below if you have any fantasy questions. I'd be happy to answer them. And yeah, I have 99 subscribers. Maybe you want to be my 100th. Thank you guys so much for listening. I got best bets coming out tomorrow with Evan into sports, so stay tuned for that one. But yeah, until next time, peace.